Today I would like to go over some key topics on engineering babies. Parents having big dreams for their children and themselves, new technology and bioengineering, PGD, what it is and its purposes, the risks and uncertain consequences of designing babies, where do we set limits on genetic engineering, and the raising concerns of engineering babies. Parents have big dreams for their children and themselves. New technology and bioengineering. What is PGD and its purposes? The risks and uncertain consequences of designing babies. Where do we set limits on genetic engineering? And the raising concerns of engineering babies. Specific traits or genders they desire. Who thinks parents should have this kind of control?
I think that parents should, if there's disease or something involved, maybe to eradicate that.
Parents may become so fixated on the importance of having a boy or a girl, an athlete or a musician, that they will forget to put this child's interest in mind and the natural course in mind. Designing a child should not become as simple as designing your brand new car or a boat. Researchers like Davis have argued that even traits that are useful for all life plans, such as intelligence, may be chosen with very particular life plans in mind. These kind of expectations may restrict the child's future freedom. What may be important for the outlook of a child is not so much the nature of the trait chosen as what may have prompted the parents to select that trait. Davis has continued on to say that in particularly sex selection and prenatal testing requires a huge investment of time, money, and personal inconvenience. She feared that this will give the parents a sense of entitlement to whatever qualities they were hoping for. This in turn may make the parents feel cheated if the child doesn't fulfill those expectations. This could cause a lot of resentment between the child and parent in later years. Even though parents feel they should be entitled to genetically engineer their babies with desired traits and genders, they should not be allowed to sift through embryos to determine which one should live and which one should not. It can have negative effects on a potential life and the future of humanity. If parents are allowed to control the outcomes of important characteristics that make everyone in this world unique, researchers like Davis have stated that the robust respect for parental autonomy ought to be complemented by respect for the autonomy of the future child as well. Our society needs to appeal to a child's right to an open future. There are risks presented by PGD. Researchers like McClure and Tasca say patients run a risk of misdiagnosis because of technical and inherent errors, which can be a real concern to practitioners. They claim that this is why the field is moving rather slowly. PGD is still in its infancy and concerns are still arising for the safety of both the embryo and mother. Another concern they have is its efficiency and overall clinical usefulness. The procedure is highly complex. There are also ethical dangers connected with PGD and its potential problems. Some of these dangers infringe on the fabric of various cultures and religious beliefs. The conservative position would consist of both discarding an embryo and aborting a fetus as morally unacceptable. PGD is not only offensive to many cultures and religions, but it may have a long-term effect on the human population through modifying genetics, altering the gene pool. This could potentially compromise future generations if we remove genetic defects or modify them to our specifications. This is an uncertain risk we should not be willing to take for our future generations' sake. We do not want to infringe problems from our negative choices onto our posterity. There are now uncertain consequences in the procedures of PGD. Kronfeld in his study that the moral danger does not lie with the people who seek the testing, but rather in the discrimination against people with genetic conditions or their parents. He continued on to say that widespread efforts at prevention and perfectionism could seed a culture of intolerance, and it may send a message of rejection towards people with disabilities. Singling out and labeling certain genetic conditions that scientists feel are test-worthy holds a danger of prejudice. By selecting a certain class of genetic conditions as serious, we risk making it appear as though the decision against having a child with a serious condition is repulsive to society. The choices that will be made are going to reflect our values. What we do to choose our culture is no less of a problem than how we choose our own children. We will see the consequences of both problems in generations to come. Researcher Jeffrey Botkin, he holds that given the potential power of PGD to select the genetic characteristics of future children, it could promote societal expectations of perfectibility in children, thus fostering a more narrowed intolerance of those disabled from genetic and congenital ideologies, and perhaps of the parents who choose to have such a child. It's a serious concern that deserves scrutiny and persistent effort to combat discriminatory attitudes toward the disabled. And many parents will continue to seek perfection in their children. Parents may feel that they would be much happier if they could select just the right child in their own eyes. And the very act could affect the parent and child relationship as life progresses. We will most likely see more selection of traits and genders through PGD in the near future due to the self-interest of parents in the world we live in. It will most likely become popular for these frivolous reasons rather than for the prevention of actual genetic diseases, which was originally what it was intended for. And it's important that the uses and misuses of this experimental technology be debated and brought into question. Through personal experience with genetic disorders, people are capable of leading full, happy, and productive lives. I actually work at a high school where I'm a one-on-one aide with a girl with Down syndrome, and she is very capable of leading a full and productive life as far as she has a lot of potential to make a living for herself and to expand herself through a job or a career. And it's understandably not a preference in life, but given the circumstance, I believe every embryo should have a chance to live. And let us not make the decision for them. Report. They wrote, "The salient fact about human procreation in its natural context is that children are not made but begotten. By this we mean that children are the issue of our love, not the product of our wills. A man and a woman do not produce or choose a particular child as they might buy a particular brand of soap. Rather, they stand in relation to their child as recipients of a gift." We should all appreciate just how different we are from one another. And it's what makes this world diverse and unique, and I think that's something we could all agree with. For whatever benefits PGD might bring, its use could reduce the tolerance for the less than perfect baby, as they call it, as well as the effect this may have on a parent and child relationship. Parents should not be allowed to control these individual characteristics for their own satisfaction. They should not be allowed to sift through embryos to determine which one should live and which one should not. And parents have always had hopes and expectations after the birth of a child, although this is based upon the understanding that children will grow up and go directions which ultimately the parents have very little control over. And I'm sure some of you actually have experienced that. And most of us find that we become quite different from what our parents had in mind, and we continue to love our children and our parents the same for the most part. It's a fundamental part of the parent and child relationship. And we would not want children to resent us intruding in on their open future. The right to a child's future should not be sacrificed out of respect for parental rights and reproductive decisions. I'd like to thank everyone who came today, and I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. And thanks for your time, and have a great day.